Thank you very much for calling me to come and speak about a subject which I'm sure today is a difficult one for all of us on the left. I think one of the advantages of coming a little later is a lot of the things have already been said, so I don't really have to repeat them. So I'm going to take advantage of that and speak on some of the issues which have been raised, which I could perhaps go further. I think one of the important things for us today is to realize that we have two kinds of crisis. One is a deep economic crisis which has made at least the neoliberal project lose a part of its legitimacy, and a deep political crisis in which we are not able to take forward the anti-neoliberal project. That means the crisis has provided an opportunity, but unfortunately at the moment politically we don't seem to be able to remodel what is in crisis. And I think this is something that we have to reflect upon, that unlike other crises where you could think of immediate advances of the left, except perhaps in Latin America where we do see the left advance, in the rest of the world at the moment the left is not in an advancing position. It's true for Europe, it's true for large parts of Asia, and I suspect, though I do not know as much about it, it's also true for large parts of Africa. So I think we need to reflect on that how can we take the anti-neoliberal project, if you will, forward and make it into a project which is pro-people and which provides all of us with an alternative vision of society with which we all came. We didn't come here only for opposing something. We came here to the World Social Forum as well as to our politics with an idea that we were in a different kind of society. The question is, while 20th century socialism, the fact that Soviet Union fell, the socialist bloc really disintegrated, the fact that China is building what appears to be a large state-driven but market economy, means that we need to rediscover a socialist alternate or a different socialist vision. The left needs to reconstitute its vision of what kind of economic production it wants, what kind of social organization it wants, and therefore what kind of political institutions that we have to build for that. I would suggest that we start with the idea that in 20th century socialism, we looked really at ownership of production as the key issue. Who owns the economic assets of society? And if you could displace the ownership from the bourgeoisie to the state, and it was really to the state, then since the state was owned now not by a ruling small elite but by the people, we felt that we had overcome the problem of capitalism. But what happens really is the organization of production is not fundamentally different the way capitalist production was developing and the way the socialist forms of production really developed. It was more economies of scale, very large factories, hierarchically organized, decision-making being very centralized. All this meant that the energies of the people, the creative energies of the working class itself could not be harnessed into the process of change. And I think 21st century socialism has to address the issue of what kind of organization of social production, economic production we want. I think solidarity economy can be a part of the answer, but we really need to think about answers which are already present in the way also capitalism is reorganizing its production. If we look at capitalist production today, what we find is at the bottom you have the productive assets that are there. which are run by small groups of people, small companies, and what we have at the top is finance capital, which controls the production by virtue of technology, intellectual property rights as they call it, and brand. You know, the same shoe is produced in Indonesia, in Vietnam, in other parts of the world at $5. When it is branded and presented to all of us, it costs $50 because you have Nike behind it or Adidas behind it. So the whole transformation that has taken place in production is there is a decentralized or even capitalist production today, and it is finance capital which controls the sale of goods, controls through the market, that is the brand, and the technology it commands really controls two ends of the production process and makes it surplus. But at the level of production, it is already decentralized, it's already small, it's moved away from what I would call the Fordian paradigm of large economic spaces within which we organize our production. I think this gives us an opportunity to think of, particularly in countries like India, I do not know about Brazil, but particularly in countries like India, which has a very large small-scale production, whether we can therefore avoid going through a capitalist transformation by destroying our small-scale production first, replacing it with quote-unquote large-scale capitalist forms of production, but can we fight that it is possible to transform this large artisanal small-scale production into the new form of production within which technology has to be freed from the control of capital, which means knowledge production, and I'm not talking about knowledge per se, but new knowledge production has to be freed from the control of capital. This is what we would say is the commons project, the knowledge commons project, where technology and science should not be privatized but should be put to common good. It belongs to everybody. It does not get, knowledge does not get worn out if you use it again and again, unlike a commodity. So knowledge cannot be considered like any other commodity, and therefore its privatization of commodity in this sense really makes no sense. So I would say that we need to really focus our fight in what is already happening in society, because any new form of production does not take place de novo. It takes place within society, within the current forms of production, and it is that we have to focus on to find out what are the new forms of production that a new socialist vision should encompass. The question for the left, because this is really about state power. It is not about just ideas. How do we configure state power differently? And I would suggest that it cannot be done just at the level of civil society, because ultimately state power also means the repressive arm of the state. And if you see the neoliberal state, this is the only part of the state that has strengthened. The police powers of the state, the powers to repress has strengthened, and of course after 9/11 it has got legitimized by saying we are protecting you from attacks which are coming in. A few people coming with their shoelaces, with their underwear, is a huge threat to the existence of capitalism in the United States today. So if you really look at the growth of state power, that the repressive power of the state, we have to confront the fact that it is not going to be met with just diffused civil society actions or horizontal organizations on issues, because issues by themselves do not reorganize society. They are only points of intervention, but unless you put all of it together in a coherent alternate vision, it does not constitute a new form of society. So I would argue that we have to, as left, think of reconstituting our vision with the everyday struggle we face in our lives, which means the left today may not win state power, of course, exceptions in Latin America aside. There is Bolivia, there is Ecuador, There are other countries which we are very hopeful for, which we look forward to. But nevertheless, in countries which are large, like India, maybe parts of Europe, large parts of the world, we can at the most win local self-government power. May be able to win a municipality, may be able to win a state, what is called a provincial government, a regional government. I think we need to put our vision of an alternative form of society in which we have alternative forms of production, which we have alternative forms of knowledge creation, and the instrument for that struggle has also to be those left governments. Unfortunately, the left governments, including my country, and I'm very much a part of the left, which is in parts of the government, we have two state governments. I think we need to rethink this issue, that as long as we say we will give you better governance, cleaner governance, but we are unable to change the basic structure of capital because we are only in one state, I think we are going to be, after some time, be seen as caretakers of capitalism. Better caretakers maybe, but not fundamentally different. So we need to really put at the center of our local governments the issue of an alternative society, which is not fundamentally saying wait for the revolution, but something we can do today, now, but is fundamentally different in vision from what capitalism is building. This is more difficult than who said building a new society was ever going to be easy. Thank you.